ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search TalkSport Fan Network.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Up the Cherries in all departments. Now, before we get going, please hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button. It helps the channel to grow. I don't know really where to start with this video because, of course, we had another thrilling encounter with Slovenia yesterday, and yeah, we're through. But what more can be said? We'll go through it in a bit more detail. We're going to try and find the positives, if there's any positives to be had. But I have got two men beside me. I've got, firstly, Mr. Matthew Harrison. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, all good, Craig. All good. Nice to be here as always.
Excellent. And, of course, you'll remember him from cherry picking. Of course, it's Manny. How you doing, Manny?
All good, mate. All good. I'm looking forward to this little dissection, as it were. And it's not going to be pretty.
No, most definitely not. Most definitely not. Shall we get underway, shall we?
Ready when you are, sir.
Paint drying is more exciting. Do you know what? I absolutely love this, Matt. He looks like he's having a whale of a time.
That was me last night.
Yeah. To be honest, you know, I'm thinking of what things could be better than, you know, to be honest, I've seen a lot of funny things as well that have been bounding around. I can't really repeat them on this show, but do some to make you laugh. But things that, you know, could be better than watching England last night. Mowing the lawn, weeding, hoovering. Anything else?
Sleeping,
yeah. Wasn't very good, was it?
No, wasn't the greatest of games, was it? It's very frustrating at times.
Yeah. Manny.
Yeah.
When you saw, you know, the lineups, and of course Jordan Pickford, I've got to mention here, clean sheets at major tournament with 11. What did you make of it?
We needed to make a change. Trent Alexander-Arnold needed to be dropped.
Yeah.
But we did not need to see Conor Gallagher coming in. And what angered me about that selection was that having seen Gallagher struggle in the appearances he made, Southgate should have known that he wasn't the answer. But once again, it all boils down to the cowardice of Southgate. He picks Wharton and Mainu and doesn't even bother to give them too much of a chance. And what we saw in the first half, apart from the disallowed goal for offside, we saw an England team that were very sloppy on the ball, were not quite able to adapt to Slovenia's well-marshaled, well-drilled midfield. And so once we brought Mainu on in the second half, we started to look a little bit better. But sadly for Mainu, although he did show some good passing skills, he wasn't exactly going to be the difference maker the way a certain Paul Gascoigne was. And, you know, it was just a case of basically taking a mishmash of players and finding out that the sum of the parts is really greater than the whole. And it was just awful to see. And I think that was probably Jude Bellingham's worst game in an England shirt. And it sort of brings about a lot of questions and a lot of fears for the next stage. Is he going to be ready? And do we therefore make the decision to drop him to the bench? If we do, who comes in to take his place?
Exactly. And it's, to be honest, you know, I said it yesterday. I've said it on a video as well I did earlier on, asking for Southgate to be sacked. He has taken what can be potentially the best player we've had, you know, since 1966. You know, Beckham, you know, was a great player, but I think Bellingham is something else. He's on a whole different level. And he's broken him. He's absolutely broken him. And it's just embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing what happened. Bellingham doesn't seem to look like he knows how, to actually make such an influence on the game. Against Serbia, I think he was riding on the coattails of, his success at Real Madrid. Now it's just fallen apart. And there's only one man to blame for that, and that's Gareth Southgate. Matt, what did you think of this lineup?
Yeah, wasn't impressed with Gallagher coming in. I agree with Manny. I just didn't see. I mean, obviously Trent needed to be dropped to the bench. Unfortunately, his so-called experiment, because he hasn't got a replacement for Calvin Phillips, wasn't working.
Calvin Phillips, honestly.
Which was the excuse he come out with, wasn't it? For me, like I said, I would have brought in Mainu instead of Gallagher. But it's just so flat, wasn't it? I mean, Foden looked a bit livelier, but I thought, to be fair, when the subs come on, when Gordon and Palmer come on, even though Gordon was only on for 4 minutes, he looked, livelier than some of the players on the pitch did the whole match. So for me, I think personally, for the next round, the party has got to start for England. And I mean, if I was the manager, I would shake the formation right up, and change quite a few personnel. And I think you look towards sort of the end of the game, sort of like from the sort of 70th minute onwards, Kane, for me, I probably would have taken off and brought Watkins on to see if Watkins could have made an impact in that game. And I think he would have done.
I would have started him.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to start him, is he? I mean, I would. I mean, I've kind of started to sway towards your opinion on that, to be honest, Craig. And he's not going to start him, though, is he? But at least he should have brought him on and given him a good 20 minutes to try and make an impact. Use him, use him. You've got a squad of 26 players there. No matter who you select to start, you've got 26 players in total to use. Why is he not using the likes of Watkins a bit more?
Look at the pace we've got in that team. Bukayo Saka, somebody who's brilliant. Jude Bellingham, can pick out a pass, was excellent against Serbia. Seems to be even broken by Gareth Southgate. Declan Rice, calm, composed normally, doesn't seem to be himself. What he did at Arsenal throughout the season seems to have deserted him a little bit. Phil Foden, he's completely polar opposite to what he is at Manchester City, because this manager is playing people out of position, and these players, are having to adapt. Completely agree with you both on Conor Gallagher. Even though I did think, well, to be honest, not anybody could have really made an improvement, to be fair, on what Trent Alexander-Arnold was doing. And that's not Trent's fault. Again, it's because he's being played out of position. The star of this tournament so far for me is Mark Uy. I think he's been excellent. But when you have got a team with so much attacking prowess, why are we not playing to our strengths? It's like, to put it on the other foot, say for example, we had an excellent defense, but we thought, right, okay, we're just going to press and attack from the front. Even if the forwards weren't particularly that good, we've seen teams do that in the past, in the Premier League and lower down the pyramid, and they always get caught at the back, however good their defense are, because you're pressing too high up. What we're doing is we're defending for dear life. It makes absolutely zero sense. We shouldn't be doing that against Slovenia. We should be going out, attacking them, getting an early goal, and then going for a second and a third. Don't get me wrong, Slovenia, played it well, but they played it well because they knew what England was going to offer. They knew what Gareth Southgate was going to do. And that's why Gareth Southgate, to be perfectly honest, after these 3 games, I would do what Ivory Coast have done. And it worked for them. They went and won the African Cup of Nations, after they sacked him and replaced him, with somebody who was in the youth setup, a guy called MS Fay. And then, of course, he managed to get the job full time. Now, I know I've mentioned Eddie Howe, and, it's right to say that, Manny, we were speaking off air, that Newcastle probably wouldn't take a liking to that. But, surely it's not just going to be Eddie Howe that could come and turn this team around. Anybody with a basic knowledge of football should realise that what what would happen if we allowed this team to attack and play to their strengths is we would tear up a lot of teams. We would be competing at that point for this tournament. To be perfectly honest, we're playing like we are. We're not going to compete for anything apart from a wooden spoon at the end of it.
Well, again, the problem is, Craig, the reason why the sacking of Gasset worked for the Ivory Coast during the African Cup of Nations was because I think they had a ready replacement in who probably knew his way around the setup, but also was quite familiar with the players. In fact, I'm actually going to take a look at that in question. Yeah, Jean-Louis Gasset, who of course went on to manage Marseille not too long afterwards and got them to the Europa League semi-final, thanks in no small part to a certain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and his goals. But he ended up, he ended up losing in the semi-final. But at least he somehow seems to have a job guaranteed now over there with the French team, and I think he's moved on from the bitterness of his he's moved on from the bitterness of that experience. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, MS Fay was as you mentioned, Craig, he was with the under-23 team and was also an assistant coach. But he also had a strong career with the Ivory Coast national team, having played in 41 games. And if you take a look at his honours, he was a runner-up in 2006 and also won the under-17 World Cup with France. So as a player, he was fine. There's a tweet going around on Twitter where somebody took a look at Steve Holland's playing and coaching career, which really was nothing to shout about, and ended up providing the punchline. So it's no wonder Ben White told Southgate and his staff to go and do one. I don't want to be a part of this setup. And so we're faced with the prospect of if Southgate were to be sacked, we replace him with Steve Holland. Who can we call in to replace him now on such a short notice? I'm completely fine with having him replaced after the tournament by all means, because, it might sound a little bit harsh given everything that he's accomplished, but it is fair to say that ever since that Euro 2020 final, which was, of course, played in 2021, let's not forget, you seem to notice a little bit of a stagnation in his methods and a deterioration in some cases in the relationship between him and some of the players. I actually believe that what he did by not offering more robust support to the likes of Rashford and Saka and Sancho and Sterling after that final, I really lost a great deal of respect for him. Yeah. And once again, he's now been allowed to continue in the job on the weight of his past glories. But as any strong footballing nation with a footballing culture will tell you, past glories don't count for anything. That should be the way it is in football. And I still have people who say, you should be grateful to have had Gareth Southgate. He'll always be one of England's greatest ever managers. No, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that, because most of the success that we've earned, and I don't know if either you or Mr. Harrison will agree with me, has been in spite of him, not because of him. The only reason why I can't suggest sacking him in the middle of the tournament is because it would throw the squad into turmoil, because we don't have a proper replacement. I do not have any faith in Steve Holland or any of the assistants to take us further. In fact, I wonder if maybe I should do some research and find out who else among Steve Holland is involved. Yeah, the assistant is Steve Holland, with Martin Margetson, the former Manchester City goalkeeper, as goalkeeping coach. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank is another coach, along with Paul Nevin, a former Welsh international, I think. No, Pat Nevin. That was the Welsh international. Paul is completely different. and a section of other people who are. We have two Mark Williams over here, one being the first team doctor and the lead performance doctor. I suppose they're the same thing. But again, if you sack Southgate, it's like if you were to cut off the head of the snake would wither and die. So we've got to persist with this snake, despite its lack of venom, as it were, and just wait until the end of the tournament.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I I don't agree with sacking him during the tournament. Like Manny says, it would just cause absolute turmoil. And again, who would take over at such short notice? I mean, there is one surprise candidate, which we'll discuss a little bit later on, who I reckon, if the FA were to sack him, which they're not going to, who would step straight in there. But we'll discuss that a little bit later. But I totally agree with Manny. We can't sack him. We're going to have to ride this through. And let's just hope we can turn on, as you like to say, Craig, the sexy football.
Yes.
If we play Holland or Slovakia or whoever it ends up being on Sunday evening.
No, hopefully, fingers crossed. And to be honest, the style of football that we are playing is just atrocious at the moment. Everybody can see that. Everybody can see that, apart from Gareth Southgate, who thinks for some reason he's doing a good job. And we're missing Calvin Phillips, who, let's be fair, has been poor for the last 2 years. Lewis Cook really should have got the nod, in that England setup. Somebody who's won a trophy with England at youth level. I'm completely and utterly baffled, but hopefully things will turn around. But let's have a look at these stats, because to be honest, these don't tell the whole story in my eyes. 73% possession, 12 shots, 4 on target, 4 off target. We are not making our chances pay. And this is where Harry Kane needs to be replaced in the side. I don't care if he's the captain. I could not give a shit. What I personally think is we need somebody who is quick, effective, and that person is on the bench. It's not Ivan Toney. He's been in the bookies. But, it's Ollie Watkins. He can sit on the shoulder. To be honest, Ivan Toney shouldn't even be there, to be fair. Ollie Watkins can sit on the shoulder of the player, turn him, break. That personally is going to be better than what we are doing. He's not going to score every single opportunity he gets coming his way. But I tell you what, I think he'll convert and would have converted yesterday.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, just touching on Kane quickly. I mean, I don't know if you guys obviously noticed it or whether you both fell asleep because it was so boring. But the times that we did get the ball in the box, Kane was never there. There was a couple of times where we've put the ball into that 6-yard box, whether it be low or high, and Kane's nowhere to be seen. I'm starting to get a little bit frustrated with that, and I think you're right with Watkins yesterday. He definitely, I think, would have made an impact coming on, totally.
I think Dominic Solanke would have done a lot more than Harry Kane.
Yeah, but we could keep talking about Dom. He's not in the squad. He's not there.
Yeah,
He's not an option, is he? He's not an option. It's not an option. Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins is your options. And for me,
I have no faith in Toney.
I don't, my opinions on Toney. I don't personally rate Toney. When he last played at Dean Court, as you know, he wasn't interested. He didn't look like he wanted to be there. He knows
the guy's a knob. He's being paid by Brentford. He's being paid by Brentford.
He's one of Southgate's, isn't he? He's one of Southgate's that he likes, and I just don't understand how you can. I mean, if I was the England manager, I don't think I would have picked him because of the amount of game time he had last season, especially when you've got another player who's banged in 20 odd goals that you could have potentially have taken. But hey ho, that's what it is, isn't it?
Exactly. We do have a very special guest in our comments. It is your brother, Paddy Paddy Kirk, Paddy Kirk. Hello, Sam. How you doing, mate?
He's crazy like a buck about Paddy Kirk.
I love
Sheesh.
that. That's a song.
See, do you know what? Man is a man of many talents, and you say anything to him, you will find some way to make it rhyme.
Mr. Beasley, you flatter me too much, sir.
Oh,
But personally, I think those figures, show a side who can keep the ball, can control a game, but are completely ineffective.
yeah. I mean, it's just disappointing, isn't it? I mean,
Mhm.
even some of the shots that we did have on target weren't great, were they? They weren't exactly anything special that the keeper had to pull something out the bag. Yeah, it's just different. Definitely agree with that.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought Palmer
I'm a,
was good when he come on.
yeah. I like him. I'm a fan of his anyway.
Yeah,
And watching the Chelsea games last season, he was really impressive. And he was at Man City, wasn't he? And it was a case of he wanted to go out on loan. And Pep was like, no, you either stay here, fight for your place, or we sell you. And he made a brave move to go to Chelsea, and it's paid off big time for him. So let's hope he can do something in an England shirt in the next game. That'd be really good.
yes, yeah,
Really good.
most definitely. I don't think there's much more that we can talk about these stats. They'll probably bore us to tears just as much as the game did. But let's have a move swiftly on to how the table looks. So England straight through with 5 points. To be honest, and this is one thing I said in my video earlier on. That could easily have been 2 points because Denmark could have beaten us. They had the opportunities. They had the opportunities to beat us. And Serbia had the opportunities. If Mitrovic stayed on his feet, they had the opportunities to actually get an equaliser, which would have meant that we're going out. But Manny, what does this, looking at this table, does this say that England's, are, because I don't think we've been extremely poor, but do you think that this is just a terrible group with 4 very, very poor teams in it this year?
Well, I was actually talking with a few friends of mine, and I think if you see all of the games, you also get the idea that aside from a few sporadic moments, we've actually produced, if anything, the worst football from any of these groups in the competition. And of
Yeah,
course, we've seen Scotland completely flattered to deceive, but when you have a German team in such red-hot form, you can't really complain. And none of the
yeah,
teams in this group have really shown enough to tell me or any other neutral that they deserve to go through. And there was a part of me that actually thought to myself that if Denmark, mind you, had been able to beat Serbia, they actually would have leapfrogged us, mind you, into first because they'd have scored more goals than us,
yeah,
and we'd end up with the horrific prospect of facing Germany in the next round. As it stands, of course, for what it's worth, we've topped the group, and I think Denmark really have only themselves to blame because they should have beaten Slovenia. They should have. They could easily have beaten us,
yeah,
and we just we flatter to deceive completely, and we have no excuses really for producing the type of football that we have. A lot of people are going to say, look, we've topped the group and we should be happy as clams, but and should clam up as well. But I'm sorry, but there's no way we can do that. A true football supporter is able to read between the lines and say that some of the football that we play has not been good enough, and there are some underlying issues which mean that we won't win anything. At least with Mikel Arteta, and I know that you, Craig, were banging the drum quite loudly and proudly about us winning the title last year, and I remember you saying you believed we'd do it. But again, in the crucial moments, we showed that we have a little bit of a soft underbelly at the worst of times. And with Mikel Arteta as well, his tactics also let him down very badly. We should have gone for the win against the Manchester City team, given that they had a makeshift defence. And we ended up losing to our former manager, who brought his team with him, including his former goalkeeper and including our former goalkeeper and one of our former defenders back to our old stomping ground, and plundered 3 points off of us, which proved to, be a stumbling block in our campaign. And yes, we took it to the last week, but that's really only a distinction without a difference. And I suppose the one saving grace, as it were, and I say that with quotations, is that some of the football we played was quite scintillating. However, when it came to the crunch, we just weren't able to turn up. I don't believe that we're going to turn up as England against any of the bigger teams. But worst of all is that some of the football we're playing is absolutely shambolic. And this is why a really good coach has got to do his homework when it comes to squad selection. Because if you are so insistent on playing in a certain type of way and would like to make sure that way is used more frequently as to your liking, then you've got to select the players and the system. You've got to select the players who you believe will play to that system perfectly, and then know how best to use them. And failure to do that is just, it's just incompetence. I know it sounds very harsh, but a good manager has to do his homework and have an idea of the type of system or the systems he wants to use. If you can't do that, then I'm sorry, you don't deserve the honor of being a manager of a national team. And any top-class manager worth his salt will be eager to make sure he does his homework and make sure he has the right balance of players he wants. Instead, Southgate went for the headlines, and we ended up picking a very imbalanced midfield. The only saving grace, of course, is that Mainu has proven that he is more than capable. But let's not go overboard and say that he's going to be the saviour all of a sudden. As I said, he's no Paul Gascoigne. And as far as Adam Wharton is concerned, well, you can say that he hasn't been given a chance. But again, maybe there's a reason why Southgate doesn't want to give him a chance, other than the fact that he happens to be a coward. But again, it's just a case of selecting players for the sake of it, and not because you believe they can do a job. And if Bobby Robson could at least have the courage to give Paul Gascoigne his opportunities and make sure that the midfield would be sort of moulded around him, and even Chris Waddle, of course, who was coming to the end of his international career with us anyway. He could have played a little bit longer, but of course Graham Taylor made sure that didn't happen. Do I not like that? And the thing is, Southgate will never ever be one of the greatest managers because he simply didn't have the courage to do what was right. And even with Alf Ramsey, it was unfortunate that Jimmy Greaves, Lord rest his soul, ended up not being able to play in the World Cup final, but he was replaced by a certain Jeff Hurst, and we all know that the rest is history.
Yes.
So sometimes as a manager, you can't just make these bold squad selections. You've got to make bold tactical decisions too. And Southgate just doesn't really have the ability to do that. And as a result, we're playing some pretty poor football with players played in the wrong positions, as with Arteta, of course, as I can tell you. And we're looking disjointed. We're looking completely out of shape. And it's just horrible to see. And that's why I think there is an article on BBC Sport, and I don't want to go into in-depth reading it, but the signs are that Southgate could end up walking, especially if things end up not really going too well. And yes, the article is this. Hostility sharpens, sense Southgate era may be nearing end, by Phil McNulty. And both of you know that I do not like Phil McNulty very much as a journalist. I don't rate him. So I'm not going to read that article because we don't have time for that.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. But hand on heart, I just think Southgate, if he does walk, he's only got himself to blame, because he's had, and Matt, this is something that I was speaking about yesterday with our good friend Chris, and my honest opinion is that this is the best England team since 1966. He was saying, well, we had the golden generation of 2002 and Sven should have got more out of them. I don't believe, what Sven had is as good as what Gareth Southgate has now?
Yeah, it's a good debate. Yes and no. I mean, there's some real talented individuals in this current squad. But when you look back over the years, there's loads of England sides that should have produced something. I mean,
Yeah.
you go back to Italia 90 and we'll touch on a little comparison a little bit later on. That's a squad there really that could have won that tournament. You look at Euro 96, Gaza in the midfield and, the likes of Shearer banging them in and, we should have won that tournament. There's tournaments we can go back and look at. And I mean, I'm not one of these big fans that says about a golden generation. You're a golden generation. We got one golden generation, and that's 1966.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that can, say that they've won anything. We've no other squad has. This is a squad though that could win this tournament.
Yeah,
definitely. And like we say, Southgate's, do we call it stubbornness? To want to stick to his, his ways and not put confidence in some of these youngsters that could probably turn it on and do a job.
Yeah, exactly. Shall we have a look at the ratings?
Yes, why not?
Let's do.
Here we are. The Sky Sports News player ratings against Slovenia. To be honest, apart from Mark Gay and Bukayo Saka, to be honest, not many other players really deserve much of a rating. That's a bit harsh on Pickford, actually. Maybe John Stones, but the rest, Cole Palmer, of course, come off the bench. As did Kobe Manu. Yeah, these ratings for me, again, high, probably too high for some players. What do you reckon, Manny?
Couldn't agree more. The fact that Phil Foden gets a 7 in particular, when nothing in his performance suggested that he deserved anything more than a 5, is absolutely diabolical. Yeah, he did have, I think it was he who took that brilliant free kick, which very nearly could have found its way in, but Jan Oblak being Jan Oblak, he was able to get across very quickly and make that save. And I suppose the distance also was not really his best friend. Also had a bit of a snapshot on goal, which didn't really amount to very much, but he also deserves to be remembered as the culprit who strayed a yard or two offside to ensure that Bukayo Saka's goal would be disallowed. And Bellingham, I'd say he deserves a 5, no more than a 5.
Yeah.
And quite a few of the players in question just weren't really able to live up to their rating. Even Gay as well. I mean, obviously, people have been raving about him, and I know you said that he's been our player of the tournament so far, and he did look good for the most part, but there were also some occasions where he actually made some sloppy passes, and the passing in general was actually quite sloppy.
Yeah.
The less said about Conor Gallagher, the better. And it was just so pedestrian, really, that I can't really. I mean, there shouldn't be that many. I'd say, with the exception. No, I don't think anyone deserves a 7. I know that's being harsh on the likes of Bukayo Saka, but I'm sorry, I have to call it as I see it. And I think all of us can agree that, many of these players probably deserve no more than a 6 anyway. So
yeah, definitely.
I mean, Palmer, of course, when he came on, looked good, as did Kobbie Mainoo. But to give them ratings of 7 to suggest that they would be the automatic solution to our problems, I think that's a little bit redundant in many ways, or a little bit a bit too much. But I would like to see them involved more in our round of 16 clash against whoever it may be, whether it's the Netherlands or Slovakia or even the Czech Republic. I'm ready for that. But we're going to have to. I don't know. It won't be the Czech Republic. It's either the Netherlands or Slovakia. Whoever it may be, I will be ready for that. And more changes need to be made, even if it means having to move Jude Bellingham away from the 10 and possibly move him back alongside Rice in the defensive double midfield pivot, where I said I didn't want to see him play, but where he did actually start the 2022 World Cup playing in, then so be it. Changes have to be made. Gareth Southgate knows the positions where some of these players can play in. And there's also some talk about possibly playing Bukayo Saka at left back, even if it means having to drop Kieran Trippier. I actually wouldn't mind seeing Saka at left back and asking Trippier to move into the right back position and give Walker a rest. Or maybe play a back five with Trippier and Saka as wing backs and Walker, Konsa and Gehi, the three central defenders. It worked in the 2018 World Cup. We reached the semi-finals.
Interesting one. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Very good point.
Wouldn't disagree with that at all.
I think, you know, that change in formation as well, when we come up against the bigger teams, the likes of Germany, the likes of France, I know we can't play them till the final, but the tougher teams on our side of the tournament, I personally think that would work a lot better. And I don't understand why Southgate is persisting with what he's trying to do at the moment. Kane is isolated. And like Alan Shearer said, you know, he has lost pace. He's lost pace. He was never the fastest in the first place. So he needs somebody up there with him. Or, you know, I personally think Watkins, you know, is the right option. To play on the shoulder for defenders. But yeah, to be honest, Matt, anything to add onto those player ratings?
No, I don't think you can really. I think Manny said it all. When I was gathering the information, you know, and I'm typing away and I'm thinking, God, there's some high scores here. But yeah, no. I think Manny's covered everything on this one, mate.
It says it all when you're thinking and looking at 6s and 7s and going, oh, they're a bit high.
When you should expect this being minimal.
Well, exactly.
You know, really.
This is the minimum standard that we expect. You know, the minimum. No. The minimum standard we expect is 7. You know, some
7.
real fight. Yeah. You know, some real battles. You know, I know Manny did mention there about Mark Gui. The thing is with Mark Gui is, that his passing isn't always particularly the best, but he does seem to fight back. You know, and to win that ball back, and you know, I give him a lot of respect. He's still a young player, still learning, but
I see your point. I see your point, but I've been impressed with him, and I think he's done well, and I'm in agreement with you. But there is sometimes when you're watching him, and you do think he's possibly got a mistake or two in him.
Yeah,
I mean that's what worries me. But in terms of, like you say, when he does lose the ball, he battles for it back. Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And yeah, I have been impressed with him since he has come into the England side. But there's just a little, I think the last 2 games he has made a little bit of a mistake, hasn't he? Bit of lapse of concentration, which he's managed to recover from. But there's a little bit in me that says he might have a mistake or 2 in him.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's have a look. Expected goals per game. Look at that. There's teams in there that have gone out. Georgia, 1.25. They're not out at the moment, but of course could well be going out tonight. The Czech Republic, 1.75. England are right down there, 0.75, and it's just not good enough. It really isn't good enough. And the reason being is, again, I think it's Southgate. You know, Harry Kane, you know, has got a bit to blame, but Southgate's not playing to the strength. You know, he's not playing. He knows that he's got a striker with no pace, and you know he's playing in this way where he's getting balls into the box. And like you say, Matt, you're spot on by saying this. Kane wasn't there anyway.
I mean, we can't just blame Kane, can we? I mean, yes.
No.
I mean,
I
I
blame the
agree with
manager.
what you're saying there. I mean, totally. We'd expect him to be on what 3 goals. We'd expect him to average a goal a game, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
And for us to be on under a goal a game on average is poor. I mean, we're down there with Scotland and Serbia, and Albania and Slovenia. I mean, Italy is the other big side that's down there that's not firing all cylinders. Would I say that we would be in this position after 3 games on a goal scoring chart? No, I don't think I would. I think we would have been averaging kind of Spain, Czech Republic around there. I
yeah,
would
I
say
completely agree.
on firing all cylinders. But yeah, it's just depressing, isn't it? Seeing us towards the bottom of everything.
But if you're not if you can't hit the target and aren't, getting goals, you're not going to win any games. And this is what concerns me going into knockouts, because knockouts, what are we going to do? Are we going to just draw our way through the competition? That's not possible. That's not way to play. We're going to have to go on the front foot. We're going to have to score goals. Something has to give if we are going to get any further in this tournament. Hopefully we'll look back at this video we're doing now and go, oh, well, he's panicking for nothing. But I don't think we are. I think personally, it's the way we are playing. It's the way we are set out. And his reluctance to actually change it. His reluctance to change it. Manny, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Embarrassing indeed, and to sort of underline my point that the worst football was produced by our group, take a look at our opponents. Serbia down there with 0.70, Slovenia 0.87, Denmark 1.05. It doesn't really make for any kind of good reading, but when you consider that those teams weren't exactly offering very much, and we offered less than a Denmark team that qualified behind us in terms of expected goals per game, despite the attacking talent we have, whatever happened to all of the crowing about how our attack is the envy of the continent? I swear. It just goes to show that you've got to have a balanced team, and you cannot go into any team heavy, any tournament as a team heavy in one area. You can't have a too heavy attack. You can't have a too heavy midfield. You can't have a too heavy defense, and you can't have more than 3 goalkeepers. And the fact that they chose Tom Heaton to come out over there as a training goalkeeper, for me, pretty much sends a message that Southgate doesn't have any trust in either Aaron Ramsdale or Dean Henderson, because effectively he wants a veteran to, be a source of inspiration and comfort for those goalkeepers. You might as well have called Joe Hart, for Pete's sake. The bloke won a treble, won a league and cup double with Celtic earlier this season and retired. You could have called him there as a sort of a consolation prize for dropping him from the 2018 World Cup squad.
Yeah.
And back to the attack, though. I love how you gentlemen are saying that, yes, Ollie Watkins should be considered. And certainly when he came on for Kane against Denmark, he did lend quite a bit to the attack. The only problem is he doesn't seem to have enough experience of being able to play as a lone striker. And yes, I know you've said, Craig, that he can play off the shoulder a little bit. But if you start him as a lone striker for England, I think he's made a start in a friendly game. I don't quite remember which match it was. And sadly, I think he was overawed. He really is at his best when he's playing alongside Kane as part of a strike duo. So bringing Kane in for Watkins would not be the best idea. I would have loved to have seen Solanke come in, but as Mr. Harrison has said quite bluntly and firmly, not bluntly, that's too harsh, but very firmly, that's not an option. So it means having to bite the bullet and possibly bring Ivan Toney in, because of these of the 2 strikers that we have, Toney seems to be the one person very similar to Kane in terms of, build and style of play and approach to the game. And he's also a more than useful penalty taker, which is probably what got him the nod. But then Solanke also takes good penalties. And it's really horrible because we were scoring goals on a regular basis in the World Cup. now we just, and even in the Euro 2020, we were doing really well. But now we're just flattering to deceive. And it's all because we've got an imbalanced midfield and a patchy defense. We don't have that cohesion. What's the use of having this wonderful attack if nothing else is working? You can't just, as human beings, we need a balanced diet of all the nutrients, not just one particular nutrient. In the same way, you've got to have a balanced squad. And if you have this squad imbalanced, it falls on the manager because of the way he selected the squad, and he's got himself to blame for that. So to answer this question, how does Southgate get England scoring? I think he's going to have to start being a little bit braver, maybe pushing Foden into the 10, bringing someone like an Anthony Gordon in, having Cole Palmer play on the right wing, maybe possibly having a three-man midfield in that case with, Rice and Bellingham and possibly, can't even think of who. Kobbie Mainoo, of course, will come in. Then Kane and Watkins can start as your strikers. And as I said earlier, have yourself a back five. You've got to do something. You've got to do something to at least let people know that you are serious about trying to score goals. And it's just tragic, of course, seeing Croatia at the top of the tree with 2.18. But sadly, of course, they're out of the reckoning. France are up there with 1.98, but they haven't exactly impressed, this tournament either. So, there's a lot of attacking intent from some of these teams. They just haven't scored the goals. But we haven't shown any intent. And that more than anything else, should be what angers all of us and what angers England fans everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, let's have a look at John Stones and what he's come out with. I think we all wanted to win. John Stones told ITV, but the objective was to top the group, and we have done that. So I'm extremely pleased, and it is not always going to be an easy road, and it's not always going to be easy when everyone has got a target on our backs to beat us. 2 clean sheets out of 3 is a great positive for us to take into the next stage. And I thought there was a lot of improvement from the previous 2 games. We tried to be more free-flowing, and I thought we did that. Found people in the pockets, created more chances, and I believe it is another step in the right direction. I understand some of the fans' frustration with us not scoring, not taking our chances. That's football. We left everything out there, and it is never an easy game. Southgate just told him to say that.
It does sound like it's been prepped, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's. What do you make of that?
I don't know whether I agree with him, to be honest.
I don't agree with him at all.
Yeah, we've topped the group, we've got out of the group, but is it an improvement? It's a slight improvement, maybe, but nothing to the extremes of what we need to, go a long way in this competition.
Yeah, agree. I think it's just poor. I think, what he's coming out with there is, excuses. It's like, Southgate is making excuses already for when it all goes wrong. We've already mentioned it. We've all already mentioned it. But to turn around and say, because we didn't have that player available, and he's not even been good for the last 2 years. Kelvin Phillips, it's just excuses. It's absolute. Hold on. Somebody's actually just popped up here. What is it, Cole?
Bullshit.
I knew that was coming. We've got to get a new one because I do love the older Carl Pinkleton every now and then, but we need to get another one, Craig. We need to get a couple of those so we can mix it up a bit. Because I knew that was coming.
We need to make it a little bit more original. It is,
we need to get another one.
I will search the internet for something else, but at this moment in time, we'll have to make do.
We'll make do with Carl.
Make do with Carl. Right, let's hear what Gareth's got to say about this. Here we go. Youngsters offer hope for England. Southgate chose to accentuate the positives when speaking to ITV afterwards is there's actually positives, Gareth. At the moment, we are not quite getting that break in front of goal. No shit, Sherlock. I thought the boys who came on had a really good impact on the game. Okay. And we have had the discipline to keep a clean sheet that meant we ended up winning the group. Okay. He did praise the impact of Palmer. Fair play. Agreeing that the youngster offers something different. He did very good. He finds space well. Lovely technique. If you say that in the right way, that sounds a bit like Basil Fawlty. With Mainu and albeit briefly Gordon also having their moments, it raises the possibility of them featuring more prominently in the knockout stages. They are obviously really young players, so we are balancing blooding them in a difficult environment, but they had a really good impact when they came on and used the ball very well. There were lots of things we can build on from tonight. Um, to be fair, I do agree with him on Palmer, Mainu,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Gordon,
hmm
but why is he not starting with those players?
I think one thing as well is why didn't he give maybe Palmer a bit more time?
Yeah, completely agree.
You know, I can understand certain points of what he's saying there, but I think if a player's good enough, I can't remember who it was that used to say it. If a player's good enough, it doesn't matter their age. There used to be a famous manager that used to say a quote like that, not exactly those words,
Mhm.
but I mean, if the lads are good enough, then play them. I mean, I know we've got to protect them. I do get that side as well, but we're in the knockout stages of European competition now.
Yeah,
If they're good enough to play them.
and in fact, and we'll remember back to Euro 2020 and the abuse that Bukayo Saka got after that was abhorrent. It was horrible. It was evil.
Yes.
However, missing that penalty and having that determination to ram that down people's throats has made him a better player. I honestly do think that. So protecting players, yes, I do get it. However, there is going to be times when things happen. And Bukayo Saka didn't do anything wrong in that tournament. All he did was miss a penalty. And, let's be honest, that happens to all players. It happened to Harry Kane at the World Cup against France. And it happens to all players. But I think that resurgence that he had after all of what he was treated like, which was disgusting. It's, England fans can be absolutely embarrassed. Well, I don't even call them fans, to be honest. But how he's responded. Or what do you make, Manny, of this thought process that we should, look after these players and make sure that they don't get too much game time? And personally, I think you're good enough to play. Go straight in at the deep end. If something happens like it did at Euro 2020, support that player, and that player will repay you and become a better player for it.
You know what's really disgusting about the whole Euro 2020 debacle, Craig?
Yeah.
This gentleman over here let our nation down by missing a penalty at Euro 96. I suppose, you can't
Mhm.
necessarily blame him because I believe Paul Ince was supposed to take a penalty, but for some reason ended up not doing so.
Yeah.
And this poor guy ended up going over there. As much as you'd like to give him credit for having the bottle to take it, the fact is he completely missed it. And I mean, of course, it was saved by Kopka, but it was a poor penalty in any case, and that just goes to show why defenders can seldom, if ever, be trusted to take a penalty, because more often than not,
Mhm.
they just don't have it in them to get that instinct. But his reward for that was getting to star in a Pizza Hut advertisement alongside fellow penalty tragic heroes Stuart Pearce and Chris Waddle.
Yeah.
What did Bukayo Saka, Marcus Rashford, and Jadon Sancho get? Dogs abuse.
Yeah.
And Did
Oh,
Gareth
it was worse
Southgate
than
look
dog's
to...
abuse, wasn't it? It was.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it was
I'm
disgusting.
agreed completely, and I'm glad you emphasised that. And we didn't even see Southgate try his bit to condemn this abuse at all, and it led to I think it led to quite a few of these players having to turn off their social media accounts. The
Mhm.
thing is, what angers me about that is that Southgate knows only too well the pain of missing a penalty and has seeing it cost his team in a major tournament. And obviously, for the likes of Stuart Pearce, David Platt, and Paul Gascoigne, Italia 90 heroes, it meant that their chance to rectify that wrong again was gone forever. The same different tournaments, same opposition, same circumstances. And they'd never get another chance to do that for England ever again, because apparently Glenn Hoddle wanted to phase them out, and Platt ended up retiring anyway, but Pearce and Gascoigne being phased out the way they were was pretty poor form in my opinion. But Southgate, knowing how it felt, he had the ability to not just be an employee of the FA, but to be a statesman, especially given that the English football manager happens to enjoy a greater level of prestige, which could be, equivalent almost to that of the Prime Minister. Maybe
Yeah.
he should have said, "I completely deplore this abuse, and these fine boys who played for us are wonderful people,
Yeah.
fantastic players, proud Englishmen who are proud to wear their nationality and their loyalty on their heart, not just on their sleeve. And they deserve all the support and adoration that they can get. I know how it feels to miss a penalty. They don't deserve this." And we had
Mhm.
the same thing happening after the World Cup with Bellingham, Rashford, Saka, and Sterling getting that same level of abuse.
Mhm.
And what do we get? What do we get from Southgate in return? This is
Silent.
really disgusting, and it just
Mm.
goes to show that how dare you try to talk about protecting your players when you aren't willing to outright condemn the abuse that's being given? Maybe he probably might have made a statement, but the interesting thing about what John Stones said to ITV is that if you were to put Gareth Southgate there, it would have been the exact same message. And I just wonder if Gareth Southgate ended up, body shifting into John Stones and going over there to ITV and saying all of that rubbish.
Yeah.
Because again, to hear that coming from John Stones, who hasn't exactly, let's set the tournament alight himself with his defending, is just silly. And that level of that mentality is now, in many ways, filtered down to the players.
Mhm.
So this particular idea here, they're obviously really young players, so we have to balance blooding them in a difficult environment. You've said it perfectly, Craig. If you think they're good enough to make the squad, if you want to select them because you believe they're the best players for the position that you want, then you blood them in.
Yeah.
How dare you have the nerve to say, I want to pick younger players based on form, and they've shown that they deserve to be in the squad ahead of the likes of Jordan Henderson and Jack Grealish and others, and then say we don't have a natural replacement for Calvin Phillips who can play in that defensive
Ridiculous.
midfield pivot area. How dare you try to insult our intelligence? How dare you try to gaslight us? I know I sound really severe, but this bloke has really, 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 turned me off him, and I lost quite a bit of respect for him after that. And yes, they had a good impact when they came on and used the ball very well, and there are lots of things you can build on from tonight. It's not just a question of building on it, Gareth. You've got to be bold enough to now make those changes. You've got to show that you were right to select them in the squad in the first place and make sure that they get more game time. And I say, I don't want to be a hypocrite here, because I remember saying that I didn't think that Kobbie Mainoo would necessarily, suit England right now, given how he didn't exactly, set the game alight against Iceland, and had a lot of people criticizing him for his, for performance against Iceland. I just didn't think that he would be suited for that. But since when he came on, of course, yesterday, he looked really good. he wasn't able to make a really big impact as such. But you would hope, and this would be the hope, that he'd build on that and get more confidence from that, and really start to take it to the next level. And yet, hope and history just won't rhyme with Gareth Southgate. With if Bobby Robson were manager, you can bet your right index finger that he'd give Mainu more chances. A courageous manager would do that. We don't have that courage in management anymore. Not since Glenn Hoddle, we haven't had a courageous manager. No disrespect to Kevin Keegan, but tactics wasn't exactly his strong suit. Sven-Göran Eriksson, may he find peace in his final days on this earth, was also a bit too conservative. The less said about the Wally and the Broly and the Italian Sergeant Major, the better. And as far as Roy Hodgson is concerned, I don't even want to talk about him. We just don't seem to have any English manager who will be courageous enough to make those bold decisions. I do like how you've spoken about Eddie Howe. Maybe he could be that answer. And yet, again, as I've said, will Newcastle's owners let him go? So this, I'll be brief and I will conclude. I'm sorry for waffling, but we're seeing more word salad from Southgate, and it just grates on me. It really does. I like my salads, but a word salad is something I absolutely detest, and I can't take it anymore.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'll tell you what, you've said it perfectly. Let's have a look at what Southgate said about the next round. So he said, I don't think we're going to go from where we are to winning 3 or 4-0. It's not realistic in the intensity of the game. But there were a lot of things we were very pleased with. What? We have to take one step at a time tonight was an improvement, and we've got to improve to win in the next round, clearly. Matt, what do you make of that?
Well, it doesn't look like he's even confident that the party's going to start the next game, is he? I do understand where he's coming from, though. I mean, playing as we are, it'd be a miracle if we turn up and, beat whoever we're going to be playing 4-0, 3-0, even 2-0 at this rate. But yeah, I mean, I think he's being very realistic there, isn't he? And he's not really fulfilling the fan base, the country, with anything to really grip onto and say, yeah, it's going to happen the next game. Cautious Gareth, as always. I mean, this guy'd put high vis on just to go into his loft, wouldn't he? So, I mean, safe and cautious Gareth here.
Yes. If anybody is wondering as well, and what is watching this live, at this moment in time, we will be playing Slovakia, but it's not because of the Czech Republic. It's actually because of Georgia.
Yeah, they're 1-0 up. Fourth minute they scored. 4th minute.
So there we are. So Georgia are going to get us to play Slovakia instead of the Netherlands, but there's a long way to go in that one. So let's move on to the next bit. England's vital statistics. Shots, 20th. Expected goals, 21st. We've seen those. Touches in the opposition box. This is a really worrying one. 17.3. Now, considering only 16 teams are going to go through into the last 16, of course, and Georgia are winning, we're probably going to be outside of the 16 teams. That is really concerning. Shots faced, 4th. Expected goals against, 1st. So we've best defensively. But the thing is, you can be the best defensively, but, if you're not going to score goals, what is the point? You're just going to draw every game 0-0. Or you're going to get beat by a slender margin. And then, even then, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Should we move swiftly on?
Yeah,
we've had enough of seeing those.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I've had enough of seeing them as well. So Gary Neville has expressed his thoughts. You mentioned Alexander-Arnold, Palmer, Bellingham, Saka, Mainu, Foden. These are massive talents, and we really cannot mishandle these talents. We really will regret it, and Gareth will as well. All I would say is ahead of Sunday is these lads are there and staring him in the face now. They have to come on in the second half. They have come on in the second half, sorry, and improved us enormously. They are our best technical players and the ones who look the most comfortable on the ball and make us look like a team. We look so basic in the first half, and that is being kind. That is the rigid England we have seen in every single tournament going back 20 years. And that second half looked like they were playing with a bit of flow. We are the only country in the world where we regularly ask, where can we fit this player into our team? Where is Bellingham going to fit in? How can we get him in? How are we going to get Foden or Palmer in? Every other country seems to get them in, but we struggle to. We have to get them in.
Totally agree.
Yeah. See, Gary Neville managed. It was it that he managed Valencia, wasn't it?
Valencia,
Very
yeah.
short period of time. Didn't do a very good job of it. To be honest, what he said there makes more sense than what Gareth Southgate's uttered.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as we've all said, as all three of us have said, he's got so much talent on his hands, that we don't want to waste it. And Gary's right. Other countries seem to fit people in, whether they're rotating them or however they're doing it, and Gareth ain't. It's as simple as that. He's not. He's stuck with that same kind of 11, apart from obviously the one change he made yesterday, which for me was the wrong change anyway. So he might as well probably just left it as it was. Yeah, it's a very, very good point that Gary Neville makes there, definitely.
Would Bellingham be rested for the next match?
Yeah, so talk about this afternoon. And to be fair, when you look at him yesterday, he looked jaded. He wasn't in the game. His pass completion wasn't great. He had no chances at goal. Is it something that we change? Is it him that maybe takes a rest for the next match and Foden plays in that gap? And then we bring a Gordon in who's got some pace. It's again about using your squad and utilising your squad, isn't it? The squad should be good enough for Bellingham to maybe take a rest and change things about a bit.
He should be, but personally, Bellingham is an outstanding talent.
He is.
And the problem is Southgate is not playing to the best of his abilities. He's changed something in there, and or said something to Bellingham and it's changed his whole approach. Personally, this comes back to the manager again, because against Serbia, Bellingham, everything was going through him. Everything was working through Bellingham. Yesterday, yeah, he was out of sorts. But you put us against somebody like France or Germany. I know they're over the other side of the group, but say for example, it's a final, and Bellingham can be the difference in that sort of game. He plays and do you know what? This is probably the best thing for him. He plays at Real Madrid. It's one of the best academies in the world, one of the best training facilities in the world. If you've ever seen the Real Madrid facilities, what they've got there, it's like a hotel. It's like a hotel based next to the training pitch. It is, out of this world. And the thing is, I think he is got better, and he will only continue to get better whilst he's there. Personally, I think Southgate, again, I just see always dropped the ball. Manny, what is it that I'm trying to get at? Can you put your finger on why Bellingham didn't perform yesterday? Am I right in what I'm saying, that this is Southgate's fault, or do you agree with Matt that maybe he is a little bit jaded?
I wouldn't say he's jaded, because let's consider this. in the past few weeks at of the season at Real Madrid, Carlo Ancelotti was engaging in a great deal of squad rotation. So it should have been that Bellingham would have been adequately rested. Yes, he played in the Champions League final, but in addition, let's also not forget that Gareth Southgate did give Bellingham a chance to rest by not really by telling him that his services were certainly not needed against Iceland. I don't know if he played the other friendly against Bosnia. I'm going to have to check that. I don't know if he did, but Bellingham has had some adequate rest, and I don't know if you can necessarily say that he's jaded. But the biggest issue here is that I agree with you completely, Craig. It is Southgate's fault, and it goes back to the issue of Southgate saying that they don't have a natural replacement for Calvin Phillips. And the thing about Bellingham is, just as you talk about Watkins sort of playing off the shoulder of another striker or what have you,
Yeah.
I think Bellingham tends to play better when he's sort of off the shoulder of his midfielders. If you try and put him into a situation where he's in a 10 and expect him to, do a lot of the work by himself when he doesn't have a strong defensive midfield behind him, then, that kind of makes him feel a little bit awkward. In the World Cup, he was playing alongside Henderson and Rice, and we saw the 4-3-3 evolve and morph into a 4-2-3-1, and it was more fluid that way. He was also able to get back whenever he possibly could.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I just don't know if he's able to, manage the workload of having to play in the 10, but also having to be able to come back, because he doesn't really have the strength of a defensive double midfield pivot behind him. We saw with Trent and with Connor, Alexander-Arnold and Gallagher respectively, that it just wasn't working, and Rice was getting overworked, but Bellingham was also looking a little bit out of sorts. If you have the best system in place and you have the right players in place behind him, he can work his magic. Whether it's a Calvin Phillips or even a Jordan Henderson, those two players lend the balance to the midfield that England need, and they can also enable someone like a Bellingham to do his best. We saw that in the World Cup. Now we just don't have that. At least there is a chance that if we were to start with Rice and someone like a Mainu, maybe not so much a Wharton, although I wouldn't even mind him being given a chance. He can come on for Mainu later on, or even replace Declan Rice if Rice has to go off with tiredness or an injury. But we're in a situation now where Rice is practically playing as well every single minute of England's game, and he's also feeling the strain. He's overworked, the poor bloke.
Yeah.
I don't know if resting Bellingham would be the solution, because, again, if you rest him, what would possibly happen to the team shape? And Bellingham is now one of those players who, quite frankly, is too good to be replaced. I know it shouldn't be the case. I know it shouldn't be the case that players are too good to be dropped. But with Bellingham, you sort of have that person. You've got that person who really makes the team immediately better. I think England missed him a great deal against Iceland because we offered nothing really without him.
Yeah.
You somehow have to find a way to try and accommodate him. And if it means potentially playing him as a defensive midfield pivot partner of Declan Rice and moving Foden into the 10 role, as I had said earlier, then so be it. If you were to drop him, you possibly would affect his confidence. Or at least if you want to replace him, you also have to make sure that you have all of your bases covered, whether it's in the defense or the midfield, before you make a big call like that. Otherwise, what you're effectively doing is cutting off your nose to spite your own face. And that's exactly what Southgate did with his squad selection for the most part. I mean, not that I don't like his nose. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a hooked nose, but still, if you cut it off, you're gonna make yourself look awful, and that's exactly what Gareth has done with his squad selection. If he does the same thing with his team selection, and it doesn't work, then he's asking for trouble. And I wouldn't be surprised if, being unable to tolerate the criticism, Southgate would walk. And of course, I might stand partially corrected, because I did do some research about the player abuse, and he did make one, pithy statement saying that the abuse was unforgivable. And I did say he did actually say that It just wasn't as forceful as you'd like it to be. I mean, unforgivable. I mean, you've got to have some stronger language than that. Come on. And I think it was Southgate who said something about wanting to be trying to be an example to the country or something like that. And let's find out what he said. Yeah. For some of the players to be abused is unforgivable. I know a lot has come from abroad. People who track those things have been able to explain that, but not all of it. It is just not what we stand for. We have been a beacon of light in bringing people together, in people being able to relate to the national team. And the national team stands for everybody, and so that togetherness has to continue. We heal together as a team now, and we're there for them. And I know that 99% of the public will be as well. Saka's been an absolute star. He's got everyone's support. You've got to be more forceful than that. And not even a peep from him about how the media have also shown some of their worst colours in their treatment of black players, making them the face of England's defeats. You have a platform. Your language has to be stronger than that. Harry Kane said that those fans who abuse our players are not England fans and we don't want you. You have a voice, Gareth. You've got to make it be more forceful than that. And the fact that you flubbed your opportunity that way was just horrible. So I was slightly wrong in saying that he didn't really say very much in condemnation, but whatever he said was absolutely useless. But back to Bellingham, I don't think we can rest him for the next match. I think he's one of those players who does have the ability to, turn things on. And if he's played in a proper system with a proper team behind him, then he can work his magic. But Southgate has to select carefully. I would either put Bellingham back in as a defensive midfield pivot partner of Declan Rice and have Foden playing the 10 and bring in Gordon, or I'd keep Bellingham where he is and bring Kobbie Mainoo and ask him to partner Declan Rice, and then bring Adam Wharton into the game. Make sure that those players you select to fill that role are actually given those opportunities. Yeah. Don't offer us some stupid excuses about how you can't pick, you don't have the players you want. No, where there is a will, there is a way. I wouldn't have minded picking Henderson if he were to be able to perform that role, because at least you're being consistent towards your system and saying that, you have the players you want and the players you think will be able to play the way you want to play. If you can't do that, then you don't deserve to be managing. But we can't drop Bellingham for the next game. No, we don't have anyone who could really, really replace him. And especially with the news that Foden has now gone home to be with his partner, who's just, I think, about to give birth to their third child. So congratulations to them. Will he come back to the squad in the right frame of mind? I mean, maybe he'll be, I'm sure he'll be happy, but will his mind be on the football? That's another conundrum.
Very true. Well, let's have a look at something else. And Matt, talk us through this.
Well, I'm sure Manny will recognise it. It's the table from Italia 90. And if you see the similarity there is 1 win and 2 draws. And I'm just put it on there just to say, the football's been dire. We know that. We've scraped through the group at top, as first place. But I'm just holding on to a little bit of magic here from this World Cup. Can we now really get going? Because if I remember rightly, the Republic of Ireland game, Manny will probably remember, didn't really get going for England, did it?
Nope. Not at all.
So that's what I'm holding on to. We've had 3 dire games at this tournament, but we still qualified top of the group. Is there some magic like what we had at Italia 90 where things started to get better as we progressed on through the knockout stage? Until the semis, obviously, to the semis.
Well, it can't get no worse. It can't get no worse because up next, Holland. At this moment in time, it is Slovakia. But I do have some negative news now. The Czech Republic are down to 10 men against Turkey. So that's going to make it a lot more difficult for them to get a result of that. And keep in mind, Georgia are playing Portugal. Now they could pull off a remarkable win, which will see them in the knockout stages. Georgia in the knockout stages. Well done to them if they do that. But Portugal, plenty of quality. All it's going to take is one goal, and we're going to face the Dutch. Which, to be perfectly honest, like I've said all along, I do not think is a bad thing at all, because it means that we have to get going. The Dutch aren't a great side. I agree with you on that, Matt. We were speaking about that earlier on. They're not a great side, but they are going to be the best that we have faced so far. I thought Denmark would be better than they were, but they haven't been particularly that hot themselves. So we are going to have to significantly improve. And to be honest, I don't see it as a bad thing.
Sorry, Craig, can I just quickly correct you there? I said
Go
they
on.
weren't playing well.
They weren't playing well. Okay. Yeah.
They're not.
No.
They're not a bad side. They're not the great Holland of old, but they've still got
Yeah.
some handy players, haven't they? But
Oh yeah,
I
definitely.
just don't think their performances have been great when
Agree.
the ones I've seen. So it will be interesting.
Yeah, most
If
definitely.
we do get Holland, and like you say, it will be our toughest test. But do we need that to wake up?
We shouldn't, because we're out there at a major tournament, and a tournament that we are favourites to win. How we're favourites, I don't know. I can't imagine we're favourites anymore. But this has to be the point, and this is why I wouldn't be unhappy if we do get the Dutch. I'm hoping. Well, it has to spark us into life, and we have to go, right, okay, we've got a tough team now, and we have to fight for this. We are at the easier side of the knockout tournament, though, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and tournament football, especially when you get to the knockout stage, anything can happen, can't it? So,
yeah,
it's for me. Whoever we face, we've really just got to turn it on. We want a good performance first and foremost, and then obviously we want the win.
Slovakia aren't going to be no slouches either.
I think these are, the games that with the teams lower down the rankings. You know what have been some of the more enjoyable games of the tournament so far. Like Ukraine. Which game did I watch Ukraine was it over the weekend? Was it Saturday or Friday? I think it was a 2:00 kickoff. Really good game. Some of the games with Georgia when they played Portugal, I thought Georgia put up not Georgia, sorry, Albania. Was it Albania?
Yes, Albania. Albania played very, very well.
They played really well, and
Italy,
Georgia
didn't they?
put some fights up, and it's
Well,
the games with some of the lower ranking sides have been for me some of the better games of the tournament.
Georgia nearly went 2-0 up just a second ago through I'm going to struggle saying this. Kavicia Kvaratskhelia. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry.
Let me try it. Kvaratskhelia.
See. Perfect. Do you know what, mate? I would never have guessed to say that.
Yeah, mate. The trick to getting some of these names is spell it before you say it, and when you spell it, you just give yourself an idea of how it will be. Kvaratskhelia. Practice saying it, and then you'll get it.
Well, I've just got hold of some of my contacts who are out there with the England squad, and they just observed some of their evening training. Sent me some.
We've
got everything to look forward to this weekend coming. So,
we've got Chris in the house. How you doing, Chris? Hope you're well, mate.
Anyone there? Only Harry Redknapp. He's round Craig's having a cup of tea, Chris.
Yeah.
Was it?
Hello, Harry. Oh, he's sat there. Yeah, he's just sat there. He's talking talking to the turtle at the moment, but there you go.
Just moving swiftly on quickly.
Go
This surprised me today, and I'll let you take it away, Craig. It might have surprised you, it might surprise Manny as well. But with the whole
Far away.
Southgate replacement talk,
Lee Carsley, England under-21 boss, under consideration as Southgate's replacement. Lee Carsley would be considered as a contender to replace Gareth Southgate as England manager. TalkSport understands. The FA have drawn up a contingency plan in the event Southgate leaves at the end of Euro 2024, as he has strongly hinted. Carsley is held in high regard after leading the under-21s to Euro glory last summer, and he turned down the Republic of Ireland job earlier this year. Other candidates would include the out-of-work Graham Potter and Newcastle boss Sir Eddie Howe, with the FA's preference to appoint homegrown talent. There we are. The FA insists that they have not spoken to any potential successors, and their desire is for Southgate to lead England to the next World Cup in 2026. The chances of that are looking increasingly remote, with the 53-year-old coming under intense pressure for England's Euro 2024 performances. The 50-year-old Birmingham-born coach is best known for his extensive Premier League experience, raking up 282 appearances, mainly in midfield for Derby and Everton. During his Euro 2023 win as under-21s manager, Carsley got the best out of recognisable names such as Anthony Gordon, Jared Braithwaite and Cole Palmer, who have since graduated to the senior squad. And there we go. That's England's next manager odds.
Boy.
Graham Potter top, Sir Eddie Howe second, Pochettino third, Lee Carsley fourth, alongside Pep Guardiola. And I'll tell you what, I think that isn't a bad shout. I don't think that's a bad shout at all. And I'll tell you why, is because this manager knows the youngsters that are coming through. He knows Jude Bellingham, he knows Cole Palmer, Jared Braithwaite, he knows the future players. And, you know, for him to take over, I see as a positive. You know,
it's also the easy fix for the FA, isn't it? It's promotion from within. I mean, if you look at Graham Potter, obviously he's not going to cost any sort of compensation fee, but he may command a high wage. Yes. Whereas you promote from within, like they did with Southgate, for the FA, it's a easy win, isn't it? I mean, I'm surprised you didn't notice your mate Gary O'Neill was on there at 25-1, Craig.
Gary O'Neill, 25-1.
Michael Carrick at 25-1. For me, I mean, like I say, like we briefly discussed previously, Craig, I love Eddie Howe. I'd love to see Eddie lead the nation.
Sir Eddie Howe.
Well, I call him God, but...
God. Okay, we'll refer to him as God.
But with Newcastle, the fee that might be in hand, if they've got Graham Potter in one hand and Lee Carsley they can promote from within, I can't see the FA wanting to pay money out to release Eddie Howe from his contract. And that's why I've said, we had a conversation several days ago when I said to you, didn't I? I said, don't get all the hype about Eddie Howe getting the job, because there's other things that will come into play. And, this article tonight, when I read that, I thought you can just see them promoting Lee Carsley.
To be honest, it makes sense. And it's not the most ridiculous idea, because he's somebody who knows the players.
He's been successful at that level. And like you say, he's known several of the players. He's worked with several of the players that are currently in the first, squad. So it's not the most craziest idea in the world, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. Manny, who would you go from that list? Who would you not touch?
Gentlemen, that I actually had the pleasure of meeting Lee Carsley's son and being his friend.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
I might have, but if I haven't, now you know. Callum Carsley is his firstborn son. He also happens to have another son named Connor, who is afflicted with Down syndrome. I haven't met him. Should be a lovely bloke. And Callum obviously spoke very highly of his family, loves them all to bits. Another sister as well. And, Callum obviously was in the Coventry City Academy, along with another chap named Luke Bromley and another bloke named Jake Richards. I got to know all three of them while studying for my master's in business administration and finance, 2 degrees, mind you, over in Florida. And I also know Lee as a former Republic of Ireland international, a part of the 2002 squad that went to Japan and Korea. And obviously there was that huge kerfluffle with Roy Keane and Mick McCarthy. And Mick McCarthy did the right thing. Will not tolerate the level of abuse that was thrown at me, so I have sent him home. And I do apologise to many of our Yorkshire-based friends for what was a pretty poor attempt at a Barnsley accent. I know that there might be some differences between the accents in Barnsley and Huddersfield and Sheffield and elsewhere, but and Leeds as well. But Carsley, of course, was in and around that setup. And he obviously, as you gentlemen have mentioned, has had a pretty good career. And working, obviously, with the youngsters has given him a great insight as to how he can potentially get the best out of them. The biggest problem I have, though, is that let's not forget that Southgate was promoted from within. He also worked with the youngsters and didn't do too badly with them, I think. I don't know if he had the same success that Carsley and Steve Cooper and others have had with England's youngsters, but again, he was promoted from within and went on to do a good job at first. But since then, of course, obviously things have not really gone to plan. And I'm just a little bit worried that with Carsley, it could very well be a case of once bitten, twice shy. Do we really want to promote another manager from within? But having said all of that, when I take a look at some of the names that have been mentioned and those that have been given very, very, very favourable odds, it doesn't fill me with much confidence. The fact that Graham Potter's top of that list fills me with dread. This is a bloke who, of course, flopped very badly at Chelsea. Yes, he did do a fine job at Brighton and Hove Albion, but when De Zerbi came in, he took them to another level, getting them to play in Europe. Although now De Zerbi is on his way out. He's already left, and he's gone to take over the Marseille job. In fact, I now stand corrected. Gasset has, in fact, been replaced. So Jean-Louis Gasset will be on the hunt for another job. And I'm glad I'm able to do a little bit of research because it enables me to see where I'll go wrong. And, I'm also big enough to admit where I've gone wrong. So, going back to that list, apart from Potter, you've got the likes of Pochettino. I don't know if that would work. Eddie Howe probably would be desirable, but again, unfavorable. And there are a couple of foreigners in that list. I mean, we've already had a Swedish guy and an Italian guy manage us. And I remember saying a long time ago on one of these streams, let's bring a German in. Let's let him sit. Let's see if he can't do the job. And, these German managers do speak good quality English. My preference would have been Thomas Tuchel at the time, although his Bayern Munich stint hasn't done him too many favors. Jurgen Klopp. He did say that he didn't want to manage Liverpool anymore because he was feeling mentally burnt out. And he's just left Anfield. Would he walk into the England hot seat having made that declaration? I'm not too sure. If we can look back at those names, though, I think there might be one or two that I might be interested in. I do like the idea of Lee Carsley. The only problem is, as I've said, it would be a case of once bitten, twice shy. But then take a look at some of these names. Steven Gerrard, he can't even get a tune out of his team in Saudi Arabia. And Frank Lampard, no. Steve Cooper, he's gone to Leicester City, and I think Chris will agree with me. I mean, he wouldn't agree with me so much, but I think he'd be one of those fans who'd be saying, you can get get Steve Cooper if you can prize him from our cold, dead, lifeless fingers.
Yeah.
Gary O'Neill, oh my goodness, that would be a huge story. And as for Michael Carrick and the work he has done at Middlesbrough, for him to, get promoted to the England job. I mean, Southgate, of course, was at Middlesbrough. He got them relegated. you take a look at some of these names, apart from maybe one or two, I don't even know if I would feel confident at all in having any of these managers come within contention for managing the job. I wouldn't mind seeing Tuchel get the job because he did have, to his credit, have a really good Champions League run this season, which was controversially ended by Real Madrid in the semi-final. And I suppose if he can communicate well with the players, then it wouldn't be a bad shout. But I just don't know. No, I don't really see too much in these lists of names. And as far as Pep Guardiola is concerned, Manchester City are not going to let him leave, and I don't see him wanting to take up the England job either. So I do like Lee Carsley. I do like Thomas Tuchel. I do like Jurgen Klopp. The others, I'm just not too sure. I really am not. And I do think that Lee Carsley could get it. And I do think he would be a refreshing change from Gareth Southgate. In fact, I do have Gareth Southgate's Wikipedia page. And as a manager, he won the Toulon tournament in 2016, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And Carsley's had more success, bigger success, I would add, with the youth teams, of course. And I'd like to think that maybe if he were to come in, he'd bring his own team in. And let's not forget that he had the likes of Ashley Cole with him as one of his assistants. So Carsley would be a very good shout, but I just don't know if I can see that happening. That's my biggest worry.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. I would love to see it, Sir Eddie get it, but I see why everybody's saying maybe not, because of his job at Newcastle. But we shall see. But I tell you
What
what,
about Gary? Briefly, what about Gary O'Neill? I know that last
I'd
season,
be quite happy with that because I think Gary does seem to get even though a lot of Bournemouth fans did slate him at the time, Matt's smiling because he knows it's music to my ears getting to speak about Gary. Me and Gary, we're like, but no, joking aside, Gary O'Neill, got a good tune out of a side that was really struggling. And, let's cast our minds back to when we got beat 9-0 at Liverpool. I personally walked away from Anfield, and I don't know about yourself, Matt, and I said, I don't know how we're going to stay in this division. Gary O'Neill, from that point to the Southampton defeat, every other team was beaten at least once apart from ourselves, and that is a massive credit to him, because if he hadn't have done that, we would have gone down. Yes, I know that he had a little bit of a wobble after the World Cup, but the job he did in keeping us in the Premier League was outstanding. And I think he gets the best out of sides that are under-equipped. Now, the thing is England is a very, very different scenario to Bournemouth. It's a very different scenario to what he's got at Wolves. Wolves are under-equipped. We were under-equipped. England have got excess talent. Is it going to be a situation where it's a Southgate situation? Or what do you reckon, Matt? If Gary got it, would it be like Southgate? Because he'd have the players that he would have dreamt of, at Bournemouth.
There was times when Gary did like to sit back a little bit, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Which was one of my criticisms of him. But I mean, he's a good coach, and I mean, for clubs like Manchester United to consider poaching him for their backroom staff must say something about his coaching ability.
Mm-hmm.
If he was to get the job, I think he would. Yeah, he'd have a good crack at it. It'd be interesting to see how he would handle the personalities of these top players. because one thing to Gareth's credit is he has kind of united the whole divide that used to be in the golden generation, as some people say. The likes of you had Man United in one part of the change room, Liverpool in the other, and they at least there's that togetherness that Gareth has over time. Whether that's so strong now is debatable, but could Gary keep something like that going? I don't know. I mean, I'd be very, very surprised if he was to get the job, or even considered, or even interviewed. Really, obviously we're only looking at bookies odds, but as part of the England coaching staff, I think he'd be an asset.
Yeah, completely.
To lead England as manager, I think at the moment he will probably fall short. But definitely as part of the coaching staff, because even some of the Bournemouth players have said, as when he was first team coach, the drills he was doing and stuff in training that he was doing with the players was fantastic. So, yeah.
When I met him and, of course, observed him, when I went down there with Al Gard, God rest his soul, what I saw from Gary O'Neill was somebody who is very astute, very articulate. He was there on the training ground with the players. He was watching and he was observing the next game against Brentford, and that says a lot for him. So I do agree where you're coming from, as maybe the back room, a coach in the England setup. Yes, as the main man, probably a little bit too soon. But I tell you what, let's have a little look at your starting 11 for the last 16. Now, keep in mind, this is for either a game between England and the Netherlands, which I still think is the probable. It's 1-0 to Georgia at halftime, 0-0 in the other game. So Georgia are sending us to play Slovakia. However, if Portugal equalise, which I wouldn't be surprised by, it will be the Netherlands. Unless the Czech Republic do something dramatic with 10 men. Supposedly it was a very harsh second yellow card. But Matt, talk us through this quickly.
Well, I've just gone crazy because I'm fed up of boring football. So I thought, let's go back three. Let's get Mainu in there alongside Rice. Let's get Gordon in and Palmer for some pace and for some trickery. And let's go with two up top. Let's try and get some goals. Let's create.
Yep. And one thing...
Obviously, he's not going to play this, is he? We know he's not going to...
Well, to be honest, this would make more sense. This would make more sense than, a back three would make more sense. Play on the front foot. We said it, even when we was managing, the football team. Play, the attacking, press high. Attack is the best form of defence, especially when you got this talent on the pitch.
Yeah.
So if we can say that for what is effectively, a side that kicks ball around on a Thursday night, surely Gareth Southgate has got to realise that's the best solution for a side which has got some of the best talent that we've seen, since 1966.
Yeah. I mean, he ain't going to play it, is he? But I mean,
No,
for me,
I like it though.
For me, let's go for it.
One thing I fear as well is if it is Slovakia, are we going to try and do the scrape through and get round through to the next round? Because I want them, even if it's Slovakia, just to go for it now. Take the shackles off. It doesn't matter if it's the Netherlands or Slovakia, you go for it. You attack that team. So, yeah. I think that is pretty much, that I'd love to see him do that, but yeah, he's not going to. I tell you what, let's call it a day there. We have had quite a lot of guests in. Not a lot of commenters tonight, but we've had quite a lot of guests. Matt, as always, a pleasure. No doubt we will be doing something very, very soon.
We're back to some AFC Bournemouth content, which will be out on Friday, I believe.
Yes.
Yep,
Definitely.
And then I am jumping on a cruise, and I shall be
Nice,
watching the last 16 on Sunday night with whoever we end up playing, somewhere out in the ocean.
Fair enough.
So,
Fair enough.
Lovely.
Good stuff. It's not going to the Netherlands or Slovakia, the boat, is it?
No, it's going Norway.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's going to Norway. So, and all through I can't remember what they call it now.
Northern Lights.
Fjord.
That's it, Manny.
Oh, there we are.
Through that, see all the scenery and visit
nice,
little
nice.
towns and stuff. So yeah, looking forward to it. It'd be even better if we win the football.
Yes, definitely.
That
hopefully.
sounds beautiful, Matthew. I hope you enjoy yourself there. I really do.
Yes, hopefully, Manny. We've been looking forward to it. So yeah, lovely country. So never been there before, but from what I've heard, it's lovely. So yeah,
Manny, no doubt we will be catching up very, very soon. No doubt we'll be doing a cherry picking in probably the next couple of weeks. And then there'll probably be a small little break before the start of the new season. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Make sure you hit the bell.
Looking forward to that. And let me just say briefly, Matthew, fine selection. I do like it. The idea of a back three is something that would appeal to me. I probably wouldn't have one or two players in there, but apart from that, I commend you, good sir.
thank you very much. Maybe I should apply for. What am I on the betting odds? 200-1. Next England manager, yeah.
Well, to be honest, when you look that Steven Gerrard's on there and Frank Lampard, and they're 16-1, 20-1, I'd be asking for those sort of figures.
Yeah, I'll take 14-1 that day.
Yeah, be generous to yourself.
Slightly
Maybe
ahead of
8.
them.
Yeah, definitely. But thank you everybody for tuning in. Please remember, hit the like, subscribe, and the bell button below. It helps the channel to grow. If you've been watching on Twitter, get yourself over to YouTube and go and subscribe on there as well. We've got loads of perks as well that are coming up as well. So from all of us, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next show. Up the Cherries, and of course, up England as well.
The TalkSport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club dedicated content created by the fans for